Look, today is about, as you know, for the last 3 months, probably since the end of May, we have been trying to find a solution to the dilemma with the closure of the South Burnett Community Hospital. And I guess I've embarked on a 3-month journey across Australia and across Queensland to try to find another provider. Whilst there has been a lot of interest from some of the larger hospitals and then once again some of the smaller hospitals, we've always seemed to be able to find some sort of issue, whether it was timing, financial, or simply workloads of particularly the bigger hospital, to get a solution. We had 90 days from the 1st of July to find a provider, as Pulse Health, the previous operators of the South Burnett Community Hospital, had given us that 3 months and Queensland Health had agreed. In the last couple of weeks, after another one of the large hospitals said whilst they were very interested in our hospital at this stage, they weren't prepared to take over the licence, we looked at other options. Other options have always been, and they will remain there, and that is the opportunity to operate the hospital as a day surgery, looking at other options with having a medical centre or using it for some other use, not a hospital. I've never favoured any of those because simply when we called for a submission from our public, when I called for that about 9 weeks ago, we received 10,000 signatures, over 10,000 signatures, and people wanted a hospital, as simple as that. So not only did we look at those options of a day surgery, and there's issues with that because if that's the case, the number of specialists who would continue to come here would drop off because with surgery would be reduced, and there were some issues with that as well. So we looked at, as I said, what else could we do. 2 weeks ago, I once again went to Brisbane. I talked to Queensland Health, and the result of that was Queensland Health gave us permission for us to transfer the hospital licence to the South Burnett Regional Council. That was on the proviso, of course, that Pulse Health were still willing to transfer the licence, and the transfer of a licence to a new entity can take up to 60 days. With that in mind, and realising the 60 days would take us past the 30th of September, I flew to Sydney to meet with the CEO of Pulse Health. And I had a very convivial meeting, and Pulse Health agreed in principle to transfer the licence to us. So that then opened up a scenario of what we do and how we process that. Basically, if the licence was to lapse, my view would be that our hospital would more than likely never reopen. There's completely different criteria, and you more or less have to start from scratch and work through that. So whilst that's why it was so important to get Pulse Health to extend it for 3 months, and now once again give us the authority to transfer the licence. I've spoken to the State Health Minister, Cameron Dick, to Queensland Health, to the Minister's Chief of Staff, and spent a lot of time with the Deputy Director General of Queensland Health in the last few weeks, and I must say they have been extremely helpful. So what Council will be looking at doing, I've spoken to all my councillors, and whilst a decision to run the hospital still needs to be carried by resolution at a council meeting, it is my intention for us to look at every possibility how we could open the hospital up as a full operating hospital from the 1st of February 2016. Whilst that's still 5 months away, as you can imagine, there would be a lot of work to do because the staff had predominantly left. At the moment, it's just in a caretaker role down there. And we also would have to engage a health specialist to work for council to run the hospital. What I've spoken to council about and my councillors about and also senior staff is that we will engage Ernst Young from Sydney, their health specialist branch, as consultants to do a full due diligence of the hospital operations, taking into consideration that for the last couple of years Pulse had run it at a loss, but we need to have a look at that and have a look at all the factors that contributed to that. That will be a very important document that we'll need to come back to council, and that'll probably take 2 to 3 weeks. Also instructed my staff to start looking for a health specialist, someone who could come in if council were to run the hospital, because they would need to start work with us much sooner than the 1st of February for us to be up and operating, and to look at staff, look at all the bands within the health funds, and work through that. So that's where we're at, and we'll make a decision that will come back once everything's worked out, and we'll bring that back. There's a large amount of information still to be obtained apart from that, apart from the due diligence, that we'll be looking at employment. This will be a major employer for people who reside in the South Burnett. There are up to 70 staff at the previous hospital. When you take in all the casuals, what level of staff are interested in returning, we would have to go through and work all that out and work through that process. But what we do need, and what I've been given, and I guess it's given me the work ethic to continue to strive to keep our hospital open, has been the community support. Simply, that's been unheard of, I think, before, particularly when you get the council to do something, to get our community behind that, and it's an issue, and the community have spoken. The other thing that has happened is that the doctors have rallied. And whilst there was certainly some issues between the previous operators and the doctors previously, that I don't believe will be the case, as they have spoken very loudly and said that we really need the South Burnett Community Hospital. So I'll be calling on the doctors to be true to their word. We'll be calling a meeting of the doctors next week to get them together. They are specialists, of course, in the health field, and they will have be able to answer a lot of the questions that I still have. Also calling on the community. They've indicated that they want the hospital simply to keep our hospital, and if we are to reopen from the 1st of February, we need the community support. We need the support to say that there is a hospital, and there is private facilities that are available. And I've spoken, I guess, prior to the closure of the hospital, when I was initially told about the issues with Pulse, and they were to leave our region. And I spoke, and I don't think I was totally listened to when I said our general hospital simply won't cope if the private hospital closes. I think that statement has been seen to be true in the last 6 to 8 weeks. If anyone's visited the general hospital, they have wonderful staff up there, wonderful doctors, but in the antiquated facilities they've got, and with the overcrowdedness that they've also now got, they are really struggling to cope. I am a proud supporter, and I will continue to lobby for a new general hospital for Kingaroy and the South Burnett. But my belief is there's certainly still some time to go before we would get an announcement, if we do get one, and let's fingers crossed that we do. As I said, we need the community to use the hospital, we need the community to be part of the hospital, but basically for the council to run the hospital, it needs to become exactly that, the South Burnett Community Hospital. It doesn't just serve people with health insurance. There's a lot of people who pay their own way to use that. There's a lot of public patients who simply don't want to stay in the waiting list in the public system and use the private facility, and as the support that's come through from the local RSLs as well about the returned servicemen who use that. And the opportunity to get more specialists there will be pursued. What I'm saying, if council were to run the hospital, we need to get out and run it. We need to be part of that, and whoever does that, not only the health specialist, but the board that currently sits there needs to be reinvigorated. It needs to be a specialist board with makeup of doctors and other health specialists, and I'm calling on our local doctors, if they're interested in being part of that board, to let us know. At the moment, Councillor Tessman is on the board, and I chair the board, but it's also got to have community representation on the board. And I see certainly our health specialist and the general manager of the hospital being a huge part, and making sure that they have a great communication with the board, and the board works at the level of the hospital, where before the board was working more from a maintenance point of view, from a council point of view, to fix roofs, to fix rooms if there was an issue. The board needs to run the hospital with the expertise that's there. Also, and something that we have looked at and had happened before, and that's getting charity status for the hospital. If council are to run it, we can get that, and I'm certainly offering my services on a voluntary basis post-March next year to lead that fundraising side of the hospital. I think there's a huge amount of opportunities there between what can be raised through the community in a fundraising model. Also, we need to, and as much as sometimes we don't want to touch on it, but there's an opportunity with bequests and money that is left to hospitals when people pass on, and that's something most other hospitals, certainly private and community hospitals, follow that, and we need to do that in a humanitarian way. But I think there's also a real opportunity with the grants that are available out there. As I said, my 3-month journey has taken me certainly along the eastern seaboard into Canberra, and the feedback that I always received, and I guess every meeting that I went to, and there would be so many of them, there was always, even if I left the meeting with disappointment, I normally picked up one little grain of rice of information that I could use, and I've slowly compiled that over the last 12 to 15 weeks. So even when it was a negative meeting, there was something in it. And most times, as I said previously, people and organisations were there to help. They simply weren't in a situation to run the hospital. Federal government are there to look after the legislation of private hospitals. The state government simply don't run private hospitals, they run the public domain. And also the other hospitals or providers that I visited, whilst they were interested in that and interested in helping anyway, they were either not in a position through a workload or not at this time, or was simply too small of an operation. But every one of them offered help. My role in the next couple of months and to go forward to make sure that we can get a hospital to operate from the 1st of February will be to call in on those offers of help. And there is a lot of people out there, and there is also an enormous amount of grants out there. In the last, certainly in the almost 4 years that I've been chairman of the board, and I know for at least probably that time prior to that, there'd been one grant that had been, and it took an enormous amount of time to expend. So that money is available. We will make sure we look at all those avenues. The other avenue we've got to look at is the band that we get for our rebates, and that will be tough. So I'm not eluding myself, and I'm not eluding council or our community to say that this will be easy, and the due diligence will certainly have some issues in it. And I'm sure it will be a debate in this room from various councillors when we make the decision. But simply in 2015, and you can whinge about it, and I do that often, about why should a local government have to worry about a hospital when it's a state and federal responsibility. The difference with the South Burnett is that we have one. We have a wonderful hospital that's down there. There's been an enormous amount of money spent over the last 10 years on the infrastructure that's put in there. We have these wonderful doctors in our region, and we have some wonderful specialists who visit our region and who I spoke to a few months ago, and with most of them actually looking to increase the amount of time they come up here. If we wait any longer, we will lose those. So that's why we need to act. And what I'm asking is that everyone be positive about this, because I believe we can turn the South Burnett Community Hospital into a vibrant and financial hospital as well. Is it part? I know that the figures for the last couple of years won't look as bright as they were a couple of years before that. But we know, and I've spoken, I'm not going to go over that today, there's many reasons for that. But with a health specialist who lives in the region, who lives and breathes the hospital, with a board driven by council, doctors and the community with a vision to fundraise money, to get money from every avenue, to look at every grant that is available, I have no doubt that it can be a profitable hospital. spoken from a council point of view for the last 3 or 4 years about simply we need to find other revenues, other sources of revenue. That just trying to get, back in 1980 when 30% of our revenue came from rates and fees and charges, now it's over 80%. Councils have to change the way they do business. Not that I'm saying the hospital will be a cash cow, but I believe, run correctly, and this is my belief, that it can be a financial success. And I, in fact, believe the fundraising arm of it can certainly push money into the capital side of the hospital. And that's what I would be aiming to do. Even had we been able to find another provider, there would have been a push from them, I have no doubt, for capital improvements for the hospital. Whilst it is in a good condition, it is a hospital, it has to be maintained at the very highest level, so there would be an ongoing commitment from council anyway, even if we were able to find a provider. I believe with council getting in there and with the community standing side by side with the council and with the doctors on board, we can raise that money easier. Need to go through there. So I need to look at all that. I need to look at what equipment we need. I need to talk to the other hospitals who've indicated some level of support. I need to talk to the state government and the federal government. A lot of that information I need to get back because I'm going to be asked those questions by my councillors before they make a decision. So that's a huge role for me and a couple of staff in the next 3 to 4 weeks before the end of October, and then the work will really start if the view of council is to proceed with this. But this is, whilst there was times when I simply wanted to walk away, I simply wanted to say, well, it's not our role, we've done our best. There was always some little trigger that kept me going, and I guess that got reinforced me even on a personal note, and I don't work as a mayor on a personal note, but I have my dad up in hospital at the public hospital in Kingaroy at the moment. And if you don't think we need to keep this hospital open, you go for a stroll up there, where those marvellous staff work under pretty tough conditions at times. And people at Kingaroy and the South Burnett, we deserve better. We deserve a new hospital. I call on the state government to continue to work through that, to hopefully make an announcement sooner than later. But we have a hospital here, and it would be a retrograde step for us to go back and use that facility down there for something else, because there's plenty of, we've got a new medical centre in Haley Street now, and there's opportunities for that. This is a hospital, and we need to keep that. So it's a short timeline, and even though a lot of people may be disappointed that it's still 5 months away, there's an enormous amount of work to be done in the next 5 months.
Well, if you get the green light, you need to go through another accreditation process.
No, the key is, and I guess that's been a lot of the work, and why it was so important to meet with Queensland Health, is that there'll be accreditation along the way, but we will transfer the licence, and that really does open it up for us to pursue this and do it quickly. Had we waited till the 30th of September, expired, and then looked at other options, that would have created, even if we were to get a hospital open then, you'd be looking at 12 to 18 months to get things. So the hospital Pulse Health didn't leave here because there was really issues with the hospital. There was issues with, from a financial point of view, the number of people, the number of beds, people that were using that. But we need to get onto everything. Anytime there's a contract that comes out from the public health, I've talked to Queensland Health about that. That does happen quite a lot. We need to be we need to be part of that. Every community event, we need to be part of it. The board has to be really proactive and work through that. And there's opportunities. We need to really drive that linkage through with both the state and the federal government, because at the moment the demise of the private hospital is adding to the tax burden of the state health system, because simply people have to be paid for travel subsidy to go away. And the other thing we need to look at, we've had these marvellous 11 specialists, we need to build on that. We need to get things like chemotherapy services into our region, because we suffer here in the South Burnett as much as everybody else. And you imagine if we could get that, if people didn't have to travel away to Brisbane, whatever, for those services, because they're tough enough, let alone having to travel and the expense. And I think people forget when they travel away, they have to go to Brisbane or Toowoomba, all of a sudden there's accommodation they've got to pay for. We're here, they've got that opportunity. So we've got the facility, we need to fill it up, we need to get everybody to use it, we need to convince everybody that it is a community hospital. It's not just people with private health insurance. Even if it was, it still should be supported anyway. But it needs to be, certainly, I believe, for the next 5 to 10 years, it needs, until we find out what happens with the general hospital. And Pulse took, it's a good question, Pulse took some equipment, which was theirs. We need to look at that and work out exactly what's needed, and that'll be another job. Luckily for council, prior to that, we'd done a full audit over the last couple of years, so we knew exactly what was there. There will be some equipment that's needed. That's why I want to talk to the likes of some of the bigger hospitals, and also both the state and particularly the Federal Health Minister Susan Lee, to talk about what's the availability of what we need to have, and that'll be something that needs to we need to take into consideration. But the issue was always, with all the discussion I had, the issue was always about whether the hospital was going to operate or not. And you couldn't go to, I asked question 1, I couldn't go to question 2 because I didn't know whether we were going to have hospitals or whether we'd have a provider. Going to these hospitals and other providers now saying we're going to operate it changes that game plan, changes our opportunity. There is a lot of, at times, equipment that is still good, that's been upgraded, that could be utilised here in the South Burnett. So I want to go through all those avenues. But before, I couldn't. Like, people would say, well, come back. If you get a provider, or if the hospital's like, come back and see us. We can help you with this, etc. Well, we can do all that now.
And the health specialist, is that going to be employed at the board, or is that going to be employed at the council?
We need to work through that. I need to work through that with my CEO, but I would presume this would be another revenue, like we run swimming pools, like we run halls, like we have general managers of water and sewerage. My view initially would be it'd be simply as part of council. We'd work through that, and I would think the operating board, the operation of the board would work through and get all the facts and figures, but all that would then come back through council. It would look at another economic arm of council, just like we do with their dams, just like we do with their pools and everything else. And I know there'll be a call out that we can't afford if in the first year if we were to lose money, but simply, I think if we can work out a 5-year plan to go forward where overall it does, because had we continued, had Pulse Health or anyone else continued, there was still going to be a call on council's finance, because there was still going to be upgrades. Every time our building staff go down there always was going to be a couple of $100,000, I would have thought, in the budget just to keep everything going. So we need to work through that. I've been amazed the amount of money that's been we can raise through the Mayor's Community Fund. It goes back to non-for-profits and all that. I think you put that as a gift and a charity fund where everything goes. And the other thing that I've had people ring me up who wanted to make financial contributions or wanted to buy equipment. But their one proviso to that has always been, Kratzy, can you ensure that the equipment stays in the hospital? If you give them that guarantee, people are there and prepared to help. So, we're not trying to call out and say, hey, we need your money. That's not the case. But there's once council makes a decision, if it's in the affirmative, there's that to work through. And, if you have a passionate, whether it's me or somebody else, you get the right general manager and you get the right board and the right chairman of the board. And I've always thought, and I shouldn't say names, but I will in this case, because it's like the book. Imagine if you had a Nina Teppanen who was in charge of the hospital, if she's not CT, someone who believed, like CT sees her life, she's taken that, she's driven that, every avenue, any avenue for funding, she's been all over that and worked through that. Driven council mad at times because she's come in and wanted that. But that's the sort of person you want. You want that person with drive as well. So we need the right general manager, but we need the right board. I'm saying if they want me, even when I'm after not being the mayor after the 19th of March, I'm prepared to give all my time on a voluntary basis, whatever's needed to continue to fundraise and to work through that and get that money through.
Just take one more question.
Yeah, it's a, yep.
I was just going to ask you
If they want me, simple as that. I'm more than happy to lead that and go through that and help raise that money. But that's up to the board. It's not. I've got no right to. I'll put my hand up and we'll work through that. So I stand as chairman of the board through until whilst I'm the mayor. After that, that'll be a call of the mayor who chairs it. I don't need to chair it or whatever, but I'm happy to be the chief fundraiser and cook the steaks and do all that, whatever I need to do. So.